anatomy tutorial where we are going to talk about the skeleton of the forelimb, and in this tutorial we will cover the humerus. This is the humerus. The humerus is a long bone, as you can see here. Long bone, that means there are two extremities and body in the middle or shaft. This one here is the proximal extremity and this one here is the distal extremity. How can we differentiate between the proximal and the distal extremity? It's very easy. In the proximal extremity, as you can see here, we can see the head of the humerus. The head of the humerus located caudally. While in the distal extremity, you can see perhaps this deep fossa, the obliquely fossa, and more important, the trochlea of the humerus. The humerus has four surfaces. We have the caudal surface. On the other side, we have the cranial surface. Here, the lateral surface, and on the other side, we have the medial surface. Now, it's very important to be able to identify the different surfaces, to be able to know if this bone is the right or the left bone, the right or the left humerus. How can we know the different surfaces of the humerus? It's also very easy. In the caudal view, you can see this structure here, which is the head of the humerus. So that means if you can see, if you put this one toward your face, if you can see the head of the humerus, that means you are looking at the caudal surface of the humerus. While in the cranial surface, here, this is the cranial surface of the humerus. As you can see, you cannot see the head of the humerus, which is located caudally here. But you can see these tubercles, the greater tubercle and the lesser tubercle, but not the head. So if you cannot see the head, that means you're looking at the cranial aspect of the humerus. What if we have, in this case, just the distal part of the humerus? It's also very easy. In the cranial view, you can see this structure here, the trochlea, and the caudal view, we cannot see the trochlea, but we can see the epicondyles and we can see the obliquely fossa, this very deep fossa here. Good. Now, as we learned, it's very easy to know which surface is the caudal surface because of the head and because of the obliquely fossa, and which one is the cranial surface. What about the lateral and medial surface? In the lateral view here, we can see this big tubercle or tuberosity. This is the deltoid tuberosity. The deltoid tuberosity located on the lateral surface of the humerus. While in the medial surface here, we can see like a small tuberosity here in the teres major tuberosity, but it's not that developed like that one of the lateral side, the deltoid tuberosity. So the medial surface is in general more smooth comparing to the lateral surface. And now we know all surfaces, so just put the bone in this direction while we are looking at the caudal surface because of the head, caudal surface. So we know that this is the caudal surface, the cranial surface is toward the head of the animal. This is the lateral surface, so let's put it away from the midline, and that means this is the right humerus. Okay? Now let's move and talk about some structures in details. In the proximal part of the humerus caudally, we say that we can find and see the head of the humerus. Next to the head in this area here, we can see the neck of the humerus, and after that we have the shaft or the body. So head, neck, and body. If we move to the cranial view here, we have these two big tubercles. On the lateral side, we have the greater tubercle. On the medial side, we have the lesser tubercle. Greater tubercle and lesser tubercle. Here in the horse, and after that we are going to talk about the anatomy, the comparative anatomy. Here in the horse, we can see that the greater tubercle is divided into cranial part and the caudal part. The same for the medial tuberosity, but it's more clear on the greater tubercle. Lesser tubercle is also divided into two parts in the horse, but it's not, really clear like that one of the lateral side. The lesser tuberosity, and especially the caudal part of the lesser tuberosity, is the insertion of the subscapular muscle, while the supraspinatus muscle here in the horse has two tendons inserts to the cranial part of the lesser tubercle and the cranial part of the greater tubercle, like this, supraspinatus muscle. While the caudal part of the greater tubercle is the insertion area of the infraspinatus muscle. Okay? Good. Here, if we move to the lateral cervix, again we can see this big tuberosity here, the deltoid tuberosity is actually the insertion area of the deltoid muscle. Here in the lateral cervix, this here, as you can see, is spiral shaped cervix called the musculospiral groove. The musculospiral groove. While if we move to the other side here, the medial cervix has what's called the teres major tuberosity, the insertion of the teres major muscle and the latissimus dorsi. Let's move, okay, so we talked about the proximal part of the humerus, and we are here in the body. Here we have what's called the humeral crest, If you look exactly, the caudal surface of the body is more rounded comparing to the cranial surface. So this is the humeral crest, and here we can see the nutrient foramen in the cranial view of the humerus in the horse, nutrient foramen. Let's move now to the distal part of the humerus. As we said before, the condyle, the humeral condyle, forms cranially what's called the trochlea. The condyle in the horse is divided into medially very big the trochlea, humeral trochlea, and the capitulum laterally. Above the trochlea here we can find and we can see this fossa, this depression here called the radial fossa. If we move to the caudal surface of the humerus, here we can see the two epicondyles, like a projection on to the side laterally and medially. We have the epicondyles. On the medial surface we have the medial epicondyle, and the lateral surface we have the lateral epicondyle. And here, from the lateral epicondyle, we can see the supracondylar crest. Between the two epicondyles, here we can see the olecranon fossa, the area where the anconial process of the ulna moves inside. Olecranon fossa. The lateral epicondyle forms the origin of the extensor muscles of the carpus and digits, while the medial epicondyle the origin of the flexor muscles of the digits and carpus. At the same time, the medial epicondyle and the lateral epicondyle, they form the attachment place of the medial and lateral collateral ligaments of the elbow joint. And now let's talk about the comparative anatomy of the humerus. As you can see here, we have the humerus of the camel, horse, ox, sheep, dog, and cat. And let's start, looking for the differences between the different animal species with regards to the proximal part of the humerus. If you look exactly, you will find that the humeral head, or the head of the humerus, is circular in all animals, but like more oval shaped in the dog and even in the cat. Okay, with regards to the cranial aspect of the humerus, let's put them all in the cranial view like this. Okay, so we can find that we said in the horse, the lateral tubercle, or we name it as greater tubercle, is divided into two parts, the cranial part and the caudal part of the greater tubercle. The same for the lesser tubercle. And this is the case in the horse, but not, for example, in the, it's clear now, not clear in the camel, for example. The camel, this is the greater tubercle, and this is the lesser tubercle. They are not divided into the cranial and caudal part. In the ox, we can see that the greater tubercle is huge and divided into caudal part and cranial part. The cranial part of the greater tubercle is more medially directed and covers what's called here the intertubercular groove. The intertubercular groove, or the bicipital groove. The same in the sheep, as you can see here. So the greater tubercle is divided into caudal and cranial part, like that one of the ox. In the dog, we can find that the greater tubercle and the lesser tubercle, they are not divided into two parts, and the intertubercular groove here is more directed to the medial side. The same for the cat. In the cat, the greater tubercle and the lesser tubercle, they are not divided, and the intertubercular groove is more located medially than caudally, comparing with the other animals. Here, there is another feature. If you look at the intertubercular groove here, the intertubercular groove is divided by what's called the intermediate tubercle in the horse. So in the horse, and the same in the camel, we can find this projection in the middle of the intertubercular groove, called the intermediate tubercle. The intermediate tubercle is present in the horse, in the camel. Divide the intertubercular groove into two parts. Here in the ox, in the sheep, dog, and cat, we can see the intertubercular groove, but there is no intermediate tubercle inside it. So here on the lateral surface, as we described before, we can see this big projection, the deltoid tuberosity. the deltoid tuberosity of the horse is very developed and big, while is very round and also very developed in the camel. It's a little bit less developed in the ox. As you can see here, we have the deltoid tuberosity. The same for the ox. This is the deltoid tuberosity. And it's less developed in the dog, and it forms like a longitudinal projection here along the humeral crest. This is the deltoid tuberosity. So let's look at the medial cervix now. Here we can see this projection here, or this rough area at the teres major tuberosity is more rough and developed in the horse comparing to that one of the camel. In the ox, there is small, not clear projection here, or rough area at the teres major tuberosity. The same for the ox. And here in the dog, the teres major tuberosity is located here. And the same, but not that clear, of the cat here at the teres major tuberosity. Now let's move down. Here in the horse we can find the nutrient foramen in the cranial or craniomedial surface of the horse, more distally in the distal third. Here we have the nutrient foramen craniomedially in the distal third, while for example in the camel it's located cranially, so you can find the nutrient foramen in the cranial surface of the humerus. So here we have the nutrient foramen more cranial medially. This is exactly in the middle of the cranial surface of the humerus. What about the ox? In the ox, the nutrient foramen is located on the caudal surface of the humerus, here in this area. What about the sheep? Yeah, exactly. So caudolaterally, this is the nutrient foramen. Okay, let's move to the distal part of the humerus. Distal part of the humerus. Comparative anatomy. Let's go directly to the caudal surface of the humerus. Put them all together like this. Here we can find that the two epicondyles, they are located at the same level in the camel. At the same level in the camel. The same for the sheep. They are at the same level. The same for the dog. The same for the cat. But here in the horse, for example, you can find that the medial epicondyle is more developed comparing to the lateral epicondyle. So it's more bigger and prominent and developed than the lateral epicondyle. Something similar to the ox. In the ox, the medial epicondyle is also more developed comparing to the lateral one. Good. So now, as we described before, caudally here between the two epicondyles we have the olecranon fossa. Cranially above the trochlea we have the radial fossa. Just in the dog, if we look at the dog, you will find that these two fossae are connected to each other. So they are connected to each other forming a foramen just above the trochlea here, and that's why we named this foramen as a supratrochlear foramen. The supratrochlear foramen connect the olecranon fossa with the radial fossa. This is the case just in the dog. All other animal, they don't have this foramen inside the olecranon or radial fossa, as you can see here. What about the cat? Even in the cat, we cannot find the supratrochlear foramen. But on the medial aspect of the humerus, as you can see here, we can find another foramen, medial surface, just above the medial condyle or epicondyle. That's why we named this foramen here in the cat the supracondylar foramen. And this foramen here, in live animals, of course, you can find two structures moving through this foramen: the median artery and the median nerve. And this is extremely important if we have like a fracture of the humerus in this area and you want to put a plate on it. In this case, you have to damage this foramen, take the artery and the nerve out, put the plate, and put the nerve and the artery on the plate, not under the plate. The supracondylar foramen. You remember the name of that foramen here above the trochlea in the dog? This is the supratrochlear foramen. This one located more on the medial side. This is the supracondylar foramen. Now I need your help to help me to know if this is the right or the left humerus of the camel. What did we learn? We have to look at the caudal surface of the humerus. So we have to look at the caudal surface of the humerus. The cranial surface should be away from us, toward the head of the animal. So we are behind the animal. How can we identify that this is the caudal surface from the head? So we can see the head. That means this is the caudal surface, and the other one toward the head of the animal is the cranial surface. Okay, this is good. Now we need to know which surface is the lateral and which one is the medial. The lateral surface, as we learned before, is the surface where we can find this big projection, the deltoid tuberosity. It's located laterally, so that means we have to put this surface away from the midline. This is the medial surface, this is the lateral surface. So let's just move it to this side here. This is the midline, that means this is the left humerus. What about this humerus here of the ox? Again, we have to look at the caudal surface of the humerus. So this is the caudal surface because of the head, where the lateral surface and medial surface. Lateral surface is the place where we can find the deltoid tuberosity of the ox. So lateral outside, away from the midline. The midline should be here. So that means we have to put the bone on the right side. That means this is the right humerus. If we put it on the left side from the midline, in this case we can find that the deltoid tuberosity is toward the midline, not away from the midline. This is wrong. So we have to put it on the right side. That means this is the right humerus of the ox. What about this one here? Can you help me? Again, we have to look at the caudal surface. The head of the animal is this direction. The cranial surface toward the head of the animal. This is sheep. So we are looking at the caudal surface. Where is the lateral surface? This is the deltoid tuberosity. That means this is the midline, and we have to put it on the left side. Deltoid tuberosity. So away from the midline. So that means this is here the left humerus of the sheep. What about this one here? This is the humerus of the dog. Again, how should we locate this humerus? So we have to look at the caudal surface, because I can see the head, where the deltoid tuberosity, this is the deltoid tuberosity, away from the midline. That means this is the left humerus of the dog, so I cannot put it here. So deltoid tuberosity should be away from the midline, This is proximal, this is distal. So this is the left humerus of the dog. Look at this bone here. This is the humerus of the cat. How can we know that this is the right or the left humerus? So don't take the bone and just move it in your hand like this. So find where the proximal, where the distal. Proximal, where we have the head. Now you're looking at the caudal surface, because we can see the head. So caudal surface, cranial surface, where the deltoid tuberosity is here. So that means this is lateral and this is the midline. So we have to put it on the right side. This is the right humerus of the cat. I hope it's clear. We can also look at this foramen, the supracondylar foramen. It's located also medially toward the midline. So that means this is the right humerus of the cat.